Hey, this is Matthew with RetroEdge.tech, and going to be talking a little bit about desktop computers, but to preface that with, I talk a lot about ThinkPad laptops and also the computer repair work that I do. I see a lot of laptops with physical damage. One of my recent videos that I did was about an Asus Republic of Gamers laptop where the power button is actually a key that's in the keyboard instead of a separate power button, and how easy that is to damage. So I want to contrast that with desktop computers, and then to talk a little bit about a project of mine that I'm going to be using desktop computers for. So with desktop computers, there is just so much less to accidentally break. If you're using a desktop computer and you accidentally spill a drink in your keyboard, it's as simple as unplugging your USB keyboard, usually just washing it out, letting it dry, plug it back in again, you're fine, everything's good to go. And no problems. Or the worst case scenario, you replace it with another USB keyboard and just plug it in. Not that big of a deal with a desktop computer. You spill anything at all in a MacBook laptop, you're going to be in for some serious pain, probably, as it's going to have issues and it's going to be expensive to fix. Lots of problems with spilling liquids in laptops. The ThinkPads are better for that because they have a great design that actually drains out spilled liquids through the bottom of the laptop. Awesome design. Highly recommend the ThinkPad T series because of that. But just to contrast laptop and desktop computers, you spill something in your desktop computer keyboard, pretty much no problem. Not a big deal at all, as opposed to spilling something in laptops. Same thing with carrying it around, accidental drops, that sort of thing. That's a whole lot. You see a whole lot of problems with, accidentally dropped it while it was plugged in, and the laptop got dropped on the DC jack cord, and you can see that, boom, then it busts the DC jack. I usually charge about $150 for a DC jack replacement on a laptop. Pretty expensive fix. Or a desktop computer, you're not going to be dropping it because it's going to be sitting on the desk, and even if it did get dropped for some reason, it's unlikely that you're going to have an expensive fix. For example, if you dropped it on the power cord, just they're built different, they're built heavier, unlikely to have that kind of problem. Same thing with opening the laptop lid to see the screen. The hinges are a weak point. I talked with somebody on the phone today who has a Toshiba laptop. Their hinge area is broken, and it's prohibitively expensive to fix, so they're probably just going to kind of do a do-it-yourself thing with tape or adhesive to hold it together instead of fixing it. Screens are separate on desktops, so that way, if you do have an issue with your screen, you accidentally bust it or it gets damaged or that sort of thing, you can just replace the screen, get another screen, plug it in. With a desktop computer, you can also easily have multiple monitors as well with a desktop computer. You can on laptops as well, but for a desktop computer, sometimes that makes more sense and so much less likely to be damaged. And of course, a desktop computer that's separate, has the box, the desktop box part, or I guess I'll look what I've got right here. It looks like this. It's got a box, and then you plug in the monitor screen separately from that. That's better than an all-in-one computer, because in an all-in-one computer, if the screen gets damaged, it's a lot more expensive to fix. All-in-one computer is kind of like the worst of both worlds between a laptop and a desktop. You have some of the disadvantages of a laptop because it's all built in together and all in one, but then you don't have the mobility of a laptop. So at least with a laptop, you get to carry it around and take it with you and go on trips, go to the coffee shop, whatever it may be, to be mobile. With an all-in-one computer, you have some of the disadvantages, laptop-style parts, not as repairable, and then screen built in, etc. But you don't get the advantage of mobility that a laptop would give you. So for most people who make money with their computers, I highly recommend that you have both a laptop and a desktop computer. And that if you only have one computer and you make money with that computer, solve this problem immediately and get another computer. Because if something happens to one of those computers, then you'll have a backup, you'll have a spare, you'll have spare computing capacity so that you can keep on working and getting money in and doing the work that you need to do without having downtime. So if you make money with your computer, have more than one computer. And it makes sense for most people to have a laptop computer to be able to be mobile and a desktop computer like that to be able to have stability of it's sitting in one place, it's going to work, less to accidentally get damaged with it. So my project is I've currently got a Dell PowerEdge server that I've got a lot of my kind of local services running. I've got a Nextcloud on there. I use it to serve up my CloneZilla images for prepping computers. I have a number of other things that, kind of server services that are all on this one Dell PowerEdge server. And what I want to do is break that up so that I have one service per computer. And that's also for resiliency. Because if something happens to the server, I don't want all of my services being down at the same time. And then I have to fix that immediately in order to get back up and running with my other services. So I would rather have each service that I do be on a separate computer or server. And the Dell Optiplex line is ideal for that. And I have right here a Dell Optiplex 3010. So it's Intel LGA, what is it, 1155 socket, I believe what it is. So the second gen Intel i5 processor is what it's currently got in there, but it's the same socket as the third gen as well. So you can have third gen or second gen CPUs in the same motherboard and they're compatible. I believe this one has second gen. So the Dell Optiplex 3010 is this particular model. And what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to have, and this is the small form factor one. It's not that big, pretty small. You can set it on its side like that. And what I plan to do is stack 4 of them on top of each other, 3 or 4 of them on top of each other, and have each one have a particular service. So instead of all of my services that I depend on to do what I'd like to do, or as part of my business, on one server, and if, say, the power supply on that goes bad, well, then I've got to scramble to get that going back up. Where if I have my services separated out, if one thing goes bad, then the other stuff will keep on running. For example, if the machine that has my CloneZilla images on goes down, no big deal, because I can just pull out the hard drive, stick it in another one, or copy the information quick. Or in the case of CloneZilla, I can have that information replicated to more than one computer so that I have kind of some failover, because all I do with CloneZilla is connect via SSH to the machine and then use SSH, Secure Shell, to copy it to the client computer with CloneZilla. So if that machine goes down, well, I still have my other business resources up. I use Nextcloud for calendaring and syncing files and some of that thing right now. The number of things that I use Nextcloud for. But for business-wise, it's especially useful for calendaring, and that way I can have it in my calendar, in my control. It's on my server. I own that data. It's not part of somebody else's that they're harvesting and seeing where I am and who I'm connecting with and who I'm meeting with. So having a Nextcloud server, having that on a separate machine from my CloneZilla, so that if my CloneZilla one goes down, my Nextcloud's fine, and vice versa. So having a separate service on each one. And the other thing that I'm probably going to do is I believe that I'm going to be using Alpine Linux for all or as many services as I can. Now, I've experimented with graphical desktop environments or tiling window managers on Alpine Linux before, and I've done videos about that previously. But in this case, Alpine Linux is an ideal solution because there's not going to be any graphical user interface. Alpine Linux doesn't come with one. It's just the command line as it ships when you install it. So this particular task of splitting my services up into one service per computer Alpine Linux is an ideal candidate for. And I'd like to get better with Alpine Linux and share my experience of Alpine Linux with you. And so I think this is an ideal way to split that up. So overview of what I think about desktop computers versus laptops, and how I'm going to be using these Dell Optiplex 3010 machines as the basis for building out that infrastructure for my, I guess, home server environment or home server setup. Thanks so much for watching. I was going to tell you a little bit more about the Dell Optiplex, but I was holding it up. It's got, more form factors. I have the smallest form factor, which seems to work well for me and my purposes for stacking these kind of little servers on top of each other. But there's the 7010 has 4 memory slots, where the 3010 only has 2 memory slots. But for my purposes, that's completely fine, because you can still have 16 gigs of RAM in the 3010, where you can have 32 gigs of RAM in the 7010. But for these services, I probably only need 4 or 8 gigs of RAM, and that will be just fine for each of these individual servers. So the 3010 will suit my needs, and will also suit most people's desktop computing needs just fine as well. So I'm going to be using Dell Optiplex 3010 for these projects. I also have a newsletter. If you want to sign up and join later on, I'm going to be doing a giveaway based on essentially I'd be doing a drawing to randomly give something away to the subscribers of my newsletter. So feel free to sign up there. It's on my website, retroedge.tech. And hey, thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.